Perfect. First screen recheck. We have to talk about a little bit of the old days, the history of the community project of 3 MVPs. Thomas Goelles is his name, and he comes from Austria. And the third one, me, I'm coming from Germany. And the third one is also an AI MVP, but he has no time today. And therefore, we want to do it here with a little history. So in 2019, you see, there was a SharePoint conference in Vienna, in Austria, and there we have an idea. Thomas and Stefan come to me and say, hey, we want to digitize you. Digitize me. So after that, 1 month later, I have the information and have to see, hey, there was a SharePoint Saturday in Munich, Germany. And that means, okay, now we in the phase, we have something done for you. And that was the first mock-up of the bot, where we have to say, okay, I have a lot of informations on OneDrive, and therefore we have to do and have to see what's happened in there. Project name of the bot was Mr. OneDrive bot, but that just was not a good one, because we have to do it later on in a different thing, and therefore we go over and have to say, okay, I know it. We started with Excel. That was not a good idea. And therefore we go to the Q&R maker later on, and we have to do to see what's up. The Q&R maker first we built in German. But the thing is, we have to translate this stuff, and that was not so easy. Therefore, we have to do it till right now in 2 language databases. That means the German ones and the second one that was also English. And I hope we will do it in a better way. That was 2020. So starting with all this stuff again, okay, click the next one. We can do it a little bit more. We have the first release. We have to release the web chat version. But you have to see, hey, that wasn't, the long story is it's not so easy to implement this stuff running with Teams. And we have to see what was wrong. The first release was there, then we have the second release in 2021, and then we have a big developer video made with 8,500 views with Microsoft personally, and we also have spoken at the Build 2022. There was an article there and there was a build there. So that was the good thing. Means, yes, I have to fight again with Markdown. Markdown. Next one. That was a build, the live presentation. And then you see the issues with the development teams. That means there is an editor that creates Markdown, and that has some issues in the first release. In the second release, they change it a little bit. But the Markdown that they represent and send to teams, that's in an easy way, was not the perfect, because I want to have it. You see it on the right. That's the latest one. That's the latest one in Teams. But I have to test it more than once. In those 2 languages, I have to test it. The first one, that's the left picture, that's Markdown, and see, hey, it's perfect running inside the Q&A section. But later on, I have to test it also in Teams. Now I have to test it with Teams Classic and Teams New Teams. That's a picture of New Teams, and you see the picture is not on the left side, because there are some things they have to do it. We have it also in Classic in the old days, and that makes it not so easy. And testing Teams also with the new client and the mobile versions also too. Testing, because there are more than 40 different Markdown versions we have in there. Next slide. And you see, sometimes, no, go more back. So that means the first thing in October 2022, they say, okay, we will retire in March 2022, but it will exist in the Q&A section until the March of 2025. And therefore, we have to say, okay, we have to do something new one. So going again, the time flows on, still the actions are there, and now you have to look for that. Next slide, please, and see what there. And during last year, there is a train journey coming from a conference in Salzburg, going home with a European Express version of a train. And he has a good, let's say, that was my best internet connection I ever had during this little trip from Salzburg back home. During the years, the search down Markdown language, I have to try the different testings with DeepL, Google, and testing all other stuff. Means we want to have an engine on how to go it from the German or from the English version to other languages. And okay, go to next. Then I tested if during this stuff with OpenAI. So you remember the ChatGPT, the old version, I have it here and found out, hey, there are more than one language Markdown. It's not stable. And the train has a good internet connection, and that means, hey, we can do it a little bit better. And I have some versions there and found the different dialects of Markdown. And coming home, I found a solution with ChatGPT to translate it in any of the 70 languages from English. The good thing is that we also have some links to Microsoft Learn. That means, okay, that would be translated too without anything. The good thing is I have found it and I gave it to Thomas, and Thomas says, hey, that's good. We can reduce one language, only one database, but now we have to do a little bit more on this stuff. We'll now Thomas see. I think that was my last sentence, and now you are on the run. If I know the perfect, let's get nerdy.
Perfect.
That means you are on the run.
True that. I remember your excitement when you were on this train journey. I found something how we can use ChatGPT, OpenAI to translate our Markdown problem. And at the moment, we are at a tech stack where we use GPT, Azure Question Answers, Olama locally, vector embeddings, and all kind of different tech stack to tackle our OneDrive knowledge base. And for the next couple of minutes, I will make a deep dive in the tech stack, and because we learned a crucial thing, at least that's our understanding, the difference between generated content and curated content. If you think of GPT, generative pre-trained transformers, generative means the large language models generate something on top of a pre-trained model. That's all we know from Copilot, that's all we know from ChatGPT, from all kind of different models out there, but we have a knowledge base with curated content. And we want to make the difference, or the next part should give you an idea when to use what. When do you use generated content from a large language model? When should you go for a curated one, and where's the different? For that, we need a little bit of understanding about how Copilot actually works. And Copilot, not only from Microsoft, basically every Google, Gemini, all the different agents out there, they all use what's called the RAG pattern, Retrieval Augmented Generation Pattern. Why is that so important? All those different agents work with pre-trained models. Those pre-trained models are super large and super intensive to train and to calculate. If you think of GPT 3.5, Mark Russinovich, the CTO of Azure, said in one of the latest Ignite sessions that they used a public supercomputer, meaning a supercomputer that lives in Azure in a public cloud, combining 285,000 CPU cores, 10,000 NVIDIA GPUs to basically train the model, meaning that's really huge and really intensive. That's the reason why everyone being afraid of our own content from Microsoft 365 ending up instantly in the model isn't a thing. It's technically not feasible. I'm not saying that that people maybe aren't out there that want that, in terms of, okay, let's grab all the content to make the model even richer. But if you think of time it needs to train and to calculate the model, given that every second thousands and thousands of people change something on their databases, it's still not feasible. So what's the way? How can we use our own data with our chatbots? That's where the retrieval augmented generation pattern comes in. Basically, you start at the point one with a question of a user, and the first thing that happens is the pattern basically says, okay, go and make a search. In the Microsoft Copilot world, this means graph or semantic index, searching for relevant documents, relevant information about your prompt, using that, enriching your prompt, making what's called grounding, and take that to the large language model, and basically not only handing over the prompt, but with the prompt together with pages and pages and pages of context for the large language model to generate the answer. Meaning, if you search for something or if you wanted to create a document and reference something from your own tenant, it on the fly takes this context information that's not part of the large language model. That's super, super important. If we just ask a large language model, we would just do step 1 and step 4 of this pattern here. And this looks like this. If you go for, let's say, ChatGPT, what is the storage limit in OneDrive? That's our question of the whole session now. We always ask this question to our different models. What is the storage limit in OneDrive? You see here, I'm using OpenAI ChatGPT Plus with a custom instruction. I have this wizard here that helps me with clarifying my prompts, and the wizard basically sees the question and goes, okay, OneDrive is not so easy. There are different versions. There's personal, business, education, what we're talking about. And then I go, okay, OneDrive for Business. And on the right-hand side, you see the answer for OneDrive for Business, which is intertwined with Microsoft 365 and Office 365 plans. The default storage space allocated per user typically starts at 1 terabyte, blah, 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 blah. That's the answer that you get from the large language model, from GPT, basically out there with all the knowledge public available to GPT-4, GPT-4 Turbo, whatever is the model behind our large language model in that case. But you can make it a bit different. You can create your own custom Copilot with OpenAI and ask again, what is the storage limit in OneDrive? I had an error sometimes with my own GPTs. The first time for new prompt, it didn't work, but the second time it immediately came back with an answer. You see here for OneDrive for Home, for OneDrive for Business, same answers, a little bit more details. Why more details? This custom GPT, if you have the Plus subscription, you can click in the web UI, go for new GPT. You end up with this screen, and then bottom left, red arrow, you see you can upload custom knowledge. And what I did here was basically exporting the knowledge base in a comma-separated value file, uploaded it here, did nothing else, just download, upload, gave a custom instruction, and that is now our OneDrive bot for OpenAI. I could make that public. It's not. It's on purpose just for us to play with it. But I could make it public and basically go out and say, okay, for every OpenAI ChatGPT Plus customer, this GPT can be available, and then you can start working basically with our questions. That would be the RAG pattern using OpenAI's tech stack. But we have it a bit different. If we go back to version 1 of our bot, basically we have end users that use Microsoft Teams. They ask something, the Azure Bot Framework takes the question to our bot application. The bot application then went for translation services from Bing Translate, tried to translate through a couple of questions, input language, translating to English, using the English question, asking our Q&A maker service for an answer, getting back the English answer, retranslate the English answer back to the end user's question, and go back through the chain. We changed that. We moved away the translate service and replaced it with Azure OpenAI. We did not only do that, we also removed the Q&A maker and used Azure question and answer service. That's basically the successor. That's the reference that Hans was making when he said, okay, this one is deprecated. That's the new service. And that's basically the cool stuff here, because Azure OpenAI, if you put in Markdown and say, okay, this is my English content block in Markdown, translated to Portuguese, translated to French, translated to Polish, whatever, it really gives you back Markdown. It also changes the hyperlinks. It's really, really a completely different ball game compared to all the other language services we tried so far, and that's super, super helpful in our flow. How does this look like? That's basically the knowledge base. That's how Hans edits the questions now. It's not the Q&A maker anymore. And you see here on the right side, he needs to still format the answers in Markdown, because Markdown is the only way you can make or you can create a formatting that the Teams client understands. The Teams client basically gets the Markdown question from the bot framework back, and no matter the desktop, the mobile versions, the web versions, they all can interpret Markdown and create HTML out of it. And that's super important because our bot relies on formatting. You see here, this is a screenshot from our version V2, where we use, or where Hans basically uses a lot of formatting here to make it clearer, to make it better readable, and also references to support articles. And we only reference to two sources. One is everything Microsoft documentation, meaning docs or learn Microsoft articles, and blog articles from Hans' blogs, because those two sources we can easily trust. That's super important for us, so we can reach out to further knowledge, for further content, for known sources. And those links, remember, our knowledge base now is only available in English. I asked the question in German, got back a really good translation for German. Asked, I think, in Portuguese, got back a Portuguese version. Asked in French, got back a French version, without anything on our side to do by hand, just taking the bit, going to Azure OpenAI, and let them basically do the translation. That's super useful for us because it allows us to make our life super, super easy. What's also changed between version 1 and version 2 of the bot is the left side here is the version 1, is just a bot application with an old version of the Teams toolkit. I don't even know. I think it was a pre-release version back then. So yeah, 4 years old Teams bot. And the right-hand side, you see the latest version. And if you look at it from an architecture point of view, on the left-hand side, you see one Visual Studio solution with one project. On the right-hand side, you see one Visual Studio solution, but with 5 different projects. So we decoupled the logic. We have now a community bot run of core project that basically acts as our business logic layer. And we reuse the logic in our different endpoints. One, the Teams bot. One, our test console to really test it locally. It's super easy for me to test things out without even the need to open up Teams. Everything from a logical point of view, every test case, is the answer good? Get me back the right answer? Is the translation good? I don't need to open up Teams. And with that, it's a question of saving around 2 minutes with every round trip, because that's how long it takes for Teams to go up. Then you need to re-sign in, and that's all a bit of a cumbersome process. That's why we looked for an upgrade here. And then the other 2 projects down there, apparently we needed to create our own version of Teams FX to pump up the version of the Graph client, so we can really use the latest and greatest, because the official version uses Graph version 5.6, and we are at the moment at 5.42. So a huge gap there. And the latest one, OneDrive bought Teams Me for message extension. That's our look in the future, because the message extension will be then used as a Copilot plugin, again using the OneDrive or Community Platform OneDrive core capabilities to basically expose our feature set also to, or as a Copilot plugin to Copilot for Microsoft 365. One logic part decoupled from our endpoints, and we basically can reuse all those bits in the different endpoints. And we even think to take it to another level, to take this core project also behind an API to also be able to use it in the Power Platform. So we just talked about it half an hour ago. Why not create an inbox where you can basically write a mail to an inbox, and with a Power Automate flow, we take your OneDrive question, ask our API that's in front of our OneDrive core project, and then reaches out to our different knowledge sources, gives back the answer, and replies with an email. If we do it properly, the flow will be, I don't know, 10, 15 actions, nothing special, because everything logically, everything business logic is already done in our project. But to really get nerdy, let's double click a bit on this RAG pattern and what we learned and the difference between, again, generated content and curated content. I used my machine locally here with Ollama and Pi2 as a large language model, and really went the way to say, okay, I have my machine locally running. You see here Ollama run Phi, so meaning, okay, I can use a large language model in my command line interface. If you use the Windows subsyndicate for Linux, it's 2 or 3 lines to install this application, to host it, and then you can prompt it in here. I need to create a governance document for Microsoft 365. Can you please generate a meaningful outline of all the topics needed? And it gives you back an answer. It's not super performant, takes 3-4 seconds, a bit more than you used from the cloud models, but it's using my local resources. I don't need an internet connection for that even, or I don't need to pay for any models out there. And you can play with all the open source models with Llama, given you have the hardware and especially the graphics card to be able to do that. And then I took, again, all the questions Hans provided in the knowledge base and created a PDF document out of it. It's 190 pages of content. And I created, structured the document in a way of question, answer. Didn't change the content. The only thing I added was I added custom delimiters, these 3 at symbols on the right-hand side, to really have the option to change or to influence how embeddings getting created. What are embeddings? Embeddings are basically a way or the way how large language models deep down operate and how they basically get the sentiment and the context and the reasoning of words and sentences. Let's make it super simple. Let's take the word OneDrive and make a super easy vector out of it with the numbers of 15, 14, 5, 4, 18, 9, 22, and 5. If you think for it for 30 seconds, you realize this O 15th letter of the alphabet, N 14th, E 5. So basically it's an encoding of every letter as a vector. But what you do with that is you basically cut out the meaning. You go back to every character represents a number, and the number is needed for the mathematics behind to operate with it, but you have no idea that it means OneDrive, and you have a hard time to make semantics out of it because you're down to the letter. So that's not a good idea. And embeddings basically, if we go one step further, is a way to say, okay, let's do it differently. Let's take the word OneDrive, and for, let's say, our large language model, we make a big index. For every word in that index, we create a vector. And every vector, let's say we have 10,000 words in there. Every vector has 10,000 positions. And 9,999 are 0. And only where OneDrive is the correct word, we add a 1 in there, meaning that we have 10,000 of vectors with 10,000 of data points, and everyone has basically a lot of zeros and 1 good value in there. That's the intermediate way, but that's not really helpful. What the machine actually does, it creates something like this. It creates vectors, mathematical representations of our documents, of our question and answers. And that's a live view in the local DB that is running on my machine. Basically, you see on the right-hand side who is Hans Brender, question, who is Stefan Pisser, all those things, and then a mathematical representation of this question. The difference in the database size here is the first one, the vectors DB. I used the default settings with 200 characters, and what this means is it took the PDF document and created sub-documents for every 200 characters and created vectors based on every 200 character chunk of my file. The incoming PDF file has about 1 megabyte. The vector DB is 100 megabytes for that. It took Azure OpenAI 5 or 6 minutes to calculate that. Then I realized, okay, and we see it later on in the screenshots, that's not really a good way to pre-train the model or to pre-train our RAG pattern, because that's the chunks that we give the large language model. That's not really good. So I changed it to 2000. The model or the vector DB went down to 10 megabyte. And when I really said, okay, let's make this delimited with my 3 at symbols, we are down at 6 megabytes of only vectors based on our content. How do you do that? That's all the code you need to do that. Couple of lines. You connect to Azure OpenAI, because the embedding those generation or this vector generation is the only thing you really need to do online, but you only need to do it once. You just create the database once, and then you query it for a couple of times or whenever you want locally. But you need Azure OpenAI to create the embeddings. And basically, you see here, step 1, connect to Azure OpenAI. Step 2, provide our local PDF. And then in step 3 and 4, you see the difference. 3 was basically saying, okay, let's do chunk sizes of 2,000 chars, chunk overlap, to have an overlap in our documents, or in the point 4, let's really work with a splitter in terms of, okay, a delimiter that really takes question and answer, question and answer, question and answer, and then create a vector store of it. And then you just create a chat for it. And that's, again, another 50 lines of code where you basically open up Olama as a provider, set the temperature at 2, create a prompt as you know it from 3, use the following pieces of context to answer the question, and in 4 we basically create a lang chain, that's what it's called, to answer our questions. And then you get something back like this, meaning locally run language model with data created from our embeddings. And again, same question, it's hard-coded in our local environment. What's the storage limit? Storage in OneDrive for Business. The SharePoint estimator has control over how much storage is allocated for all tenant users in Office 365. By default, the E3 plan has 1 terabyte. The volume can be increased to 5 terabyte. You even see that the language model outputs Markdown. I never told it to do that. It's just that the base is always Markdown, so the answer is also generated in Markdown. It uses links, so that's really, really cool. If you give it a bit more freedom, and let's get it a bit more creative, same question, and then you get back the answer. The amount of storage space allocated to an individual user can be reduced to 0. This occurs when a file that exceeds 1 terabyte in size is uploaded and stored in OneDrive. The remaining storage capacity is then available for the next files that are important into Office 365. That's a bit of garbage. So I played with it on purpose to really give it a lot of creativity, a lot of freedom. I set the point to 80%. And that's just the super interesting thing for us, because this means in contrast to our curated version, if we just use a large language model and we play with the settings, we cannot guarantee good output. And we even cannot guarantee consistent good output. Next thing, remember the 200 characters of initial documents, and that screen basically shows a bit more what goes on behind the scenes. Again, it's the same question that is inputted to our large language model, but here you see in the area of the first arrow here, you see the 5 pieces of context it found in the vector DB matching our question, and that's basically the RAG input to the large language model. We only have document chunks in sizes of 200 chars. It always found a hyperlink with OneDrive storage limits. I asked for storage limits. That's the best fit. And if you look at the link, that's almost already 200 characters. So the answer, or this is the context that it's given to the large language model. And then the output here is, if you're using Windows 10, it's easy. Just open the Start menu, type OneDrive in the search, and then click on OneDrive. You should see a button that says Get Started. Click on that, and then select Manage my OneDrive from the options. At the top of the page, you'll see your storage limit. I don't know if that's correct, Hans. You are the OneDrive expert. But you see, again, I don't have a lot of context for a large language model, so it needs to come up with something else. What we are doing now is, and that's just to make it more visible, with the delimiter function, we really give more information in our prompt. You see here, always it's 5 documents, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those paragraphs basically represent a document. That's now one of the delimited versions. And with that, you get really a different kind of answer, a different kind of quality back. And that's the big difference between curated stuff that really uses just OpenAI or semantic index to get to the right answer and to get the best out of the curated content, compared to generated content that can tend to be different each time you ask it. Just think of also if you connect it to OpenAI or whatever language model, what happens when the language model changes behind the scenes, when there's a new version? How does this affect your quality? How does this affect your answers? So it's not super easy to make sure that you're 100%, your users are 100% seeing what you want them to see. Even if you play with the embeddings, it's kind of hard to really guarantee you get really good answers back. So what did we learn? We learned that generated and curated are 2 different ballgames. And yes, we are only talking about a community project and OneDrive questions, but it's super easy to reapply the whole architecture, the whole idea for different use cases. Think of onboarding use cases at a big company, where you basically grab all the documents, all the documentation about the onboarding process of your company, put it somewhere, use the RAG pattern to basically generate agent retrieved content out of it. And then someone asks for, how can I don't know, get a park from our carpool, a car from our carpool? How can I get vacation requests, all those kind of things? And the model always answers a bit different. Do you want that? Is this something, or is this use case in an area where you are okay with not consistent answers? Or do you want 100% consistent answers to the questions? Then you need to go a different route. That's super important. But
I have a question about that.
Yeah,
I have a question about that. How often do you have, if something changed, by this role of open for the people that will come. If something has to say, okay, you have first to go there and then there, how often do you have to do the complete process to have the things, or only this document where this is changed? The PDF document has to be changed.
It depends on how you basically create your RAG pattern in terms of retrieval. If you do it in a Microsoft 365 way, in the future we will be able to create our own GPTs based on documents in the SharePoint library, and they will trigger re-indexing, I think, every night. So next day you have a new index. I don't think, or from my understanding from the blog article, it's not instant, because think of it how the Office clients basically every 2 or 3 seconds, if you add something in a document as a new version, technically makes no sense to create a whole index every time. So only after a couple of fixed periods, but then you don't need to change a lot, because you change your input documents that are the base of your RAG pattern, and this is super easy. Same thing for us. If we would just update, or if you would add, like, say, 10 or 15 questions to the knowledge base in our demo environment here, in our learning environment, I would just need to create a new PDF out of that and create new embeddings. That's done in 5 minutes. We could automate that as well, but that's not a big thing. What we also learned is that we will use generated content in the future for questions we don't have answers in our knowledge base. Because if people ask something out of the realm of our knowledge base, basically the Q&A server gives us back a confidence score, a number between 1 and 0. And if, let's say, it's only 16 or 15 or 20% sure that it has a proper answer, we have the option to go and say, okay, we don't trust that answer. Why not go to a large language model? It's maybe better to say to a customer or to an end user, hey, we don't have something in our knowledge base, but that's what we found. Use that. And that triggers a whole new subset of features, because just think of it, the old SharePoint days, search service, the report of search queries where no answer was found. Same thing can be applied over here. Answers are questions to the OneDrive bot where we don't have answers, light up in our dashboard, and Hans sees, okay, we basically provided answers generated by the large language model, but now it's time to take this question and put it also in our knowledge base, make a curated version out of it to really know, okay, what are people asking, and to fine tune in a sense, our curated version to be on top of it. So basically on demand, learning from what our users want to do. Of course, we learned a lot about large language models. We split the architecture in teams to decouple everything and to create libraries so we can really use that even in APIs. We can test the stuff locally. And one big thing I learned is I'm using Pi-hole to block all AdWords and trackers on my local network. And it cost me 2 days to realize that with a new setting and a new version of my Linux Raspberry Pi that runs my Pi-hole, it blocked my calls to Azure OpenAI. Software that worked didn't work again a couple of days later. And I needed some time to realize that I basically shot myself in the foot with updating the Pi-hole version. And a last thing, use a custom version of Teams FX if needed. If you need the latest and greatest, just download it, include it as a project in your Visual Studio, and you're good to go. You don't need to rely on the finished package. You can just fix or pump the versions of the libraries you need that way, super easily. And with that, we are at the end of my PowerPoint, Hans. Thank you very much.